Meanwhile, in Iran, the apparent first death penalty sentence for a protester has been put forward. This is what we've been worried about for some time, what we've been warning about after the mass arrests and the call for mass trials. They're now moving the area of literally putting people to death for protesting following the killing over a month ago of Mahsa Amini. Mizan, as a judiciary-linked website, said that the person, we don't know exactly who it is, was sentenced to death for, quote, setting fire to a government building, disturbing public order, assembly, and conspiracy to commit a crime against national security, and an enemy of God and corruption on earth. So they can't even come up with a good excuse for this. That reads as utter BS, and they know it, and they're doing it anyway. Another 5 people, by the way, were sentenced to prison terms ranging from 5 to 10 years for, quote, gathering and conspiring to commit crimes against national security and disturbing public order. How that could merit a 10-year sentence, I have no idea, but a lot of people are very concerned about this. People in the United Nations, part of the special procedures of the Human Rights Council, say with the continuous repression of protests, many more indictments on charges carrying the death penalty and death sentences might soon be issued. And that's what we're worried about. It's 1 right now. Tomorrow it could be 100, it could be 1,000. Certainly they've gathered up enough people and the protests are not ending. And so if they really choose that this is the hill they want their ideology and their regime to die on, a lot of people could die along with them. Dan, what do you think?
I think it's not only that, the regime is struggling right now to assert power. Like, these videos are going viral, people around the world and the West especially, which is what they're concerned about, just because of perception's sake and also because they want to, it's an embarrassment that their country is completely revolting against them and there seems to be no control of it. I worry like you do, John, where, okay, if they're willing to throw these obscene charges that make no sense here in one case, what's to mean they're not gonna start doing this en masse with the hundreds of people they're rounding up in these protests? What's to say they don't ramp it up even further with military violence? And then I don't think they would go that far because of course they have to weigh a larger world response with this. So I would stop that kind of fear and concern right there. But they could, using their power of courts to say that anyone protests, as the Iranian government is the manifestation of God's law, we decide that anyone acting outside of that is against God's law, therefore condemnation, therefore death penalty. It's definitely a slippery slope that they could take advantage of. The world community should watch this and should find ways possible to encourage the Iranian government to de-escalate this peacefully and not through these frivolous sort of accusations.
I agree, and it's going to be interesting to see if, I agree with you that they're worried about the international response, so they've decided to put this little veil over it. This to me is identical to a one of their random security personnel shooting a protester in the head on the street. They're delaying it by a little bit, but it's the same thing. There's no cause, there's no merit to their case. It's an insane sociopathic overreaction. They've delayed it just a little bit so that it'll seem responsible, but the charges obviously don't merit anything like this. And so this should be seen as identical from the point of view of the US government, the UN, as them simply gunning someone down in the street, slowing it down a little bit. If that's enough to confuse people, then that's gonna be truly pathetic. But I'm worried that, anyway, look, it's a larger issue and we unfortunately don't have a lot more time to talk about it, but I'm very worried about the next steps on this. We're gonna be keeping an eye on this story, and thank you to the members of our audience who've been regularly sending in updates on what's going on with the protests. Really do appreciate that. Check out the Damage Report podcast each day, wherever you get your podcasts, whether Pocket Casts or Stitcher or iTunes. You can join me as I give you the news and stories you want, with a range of co-hosts and interview guests jumping in on the fun each day. Again, that's the Damage Report, wherever you get your podcasts. And if you get them at iTunes, don't forget to rate and review. Sometimes I'll read them live on the show.